Welcome, Rabeel. Happy to have you today.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've been a judge on Shark Tank. How was the experience for you on personal level and on investment level?
I think production quality and everything was excellent. What was also very good was the thesis behind it, instilling the notion that entrepreneurship can be a viable choice in the country. Pakistan has a talent base that we can still function as a cheap testing ground to stress test unit economics. The most talented founders right now are also facing this dilemma of whether to continue to build in Pakistan or to go for more lucrative opportunities and build in another ecosystem.
In today's episode, we had Rabeel Warraich with us. He's the founder and the general partner at Sarmayacar, one of the biggest VC fund in Pakistan. It's $25 million. It's been deployed to invest in Abhi and Bykea in the early days, and now they are building a fund with the Saudis. It's very exciting, and join us in this discussion. You will just love it. And please do subscribe in the channel. It will mean the world to me to support this content. Welcome, Rabeel. Happy to have you today with us in Wasssl podcast. This season is about all the builders in Pakistan that are moving things forward. And happy to have you in Lahore.
Thank you very much for having me.
The first question is always that I ask my guests is why are you doing what you're doing? What is your personal, maybe professional, it can be a mix. Why?
I think ultimately at the end of the day, there's an element of wanting to build in my own country where there are a lot of gaps. I think I've a lot indeed. And I think I'm lucky in a way that I got trained in a sector and in an asset class that had a bit of a vacuum in the country. And when we started, we were really the first institutional venture capital fund in the country. And so that element of enabling entrepreneurs, that's a very important thing as well. We can't just keep going around and saying, hey, entrepreneurship is going to be really the one avenue that brings Pakistan out of whatever poverty that we have or the lack of development that we experience, the challenges more broadly. But you need to enable them as well. And what I was lucky to do was to learn about how businesses get built, how you finance them, and hopefully help them grow. And just move that a little bit earlier stage where the Pakistani opportunity was at that time. So really, I'm getting to do what I've been trained in. I'm getting to do it in my country, and I'm doing it with people that I've grown up with effectively. So.
Okay, so what brought you back to Pakistan? Is this the main reason? Because you've been living abroad for a long time, working with multinationals, traveling all over the world.
I think...
what was the trigger, maybe?
So a very good question, because the reasoning was this, but the trigger was actually my best friend, Karsten, mentioning once whether I would be able to live without knowing what I could have done for Pakistan and in Pakistan. And I think that really prompted this thought around, you have one life, and I didn't want to spend all my life building a resume. Build a resume for what?
Yeah, for whom? For whom?
You have to put it to use at some point. And I think it a lot of things aligned at that time. There was...
What time then? It's 10 years back?
So this is 2018 when we set up this first fund. I had started increasing the trips that I was doing to Pakistan even a couple of years before. In fact, every day I had off, I was just spending in Pakistan trying to figure out what role was there, what gaps existed.
How can I be relevant?
Exactly. And I think from a structural perspective, the enablement of 3G and 4G in Pakistan and mobile internet penetration increasing at a rapid pace, that signified the opportunity. And I think there was a lot of mismatch between the venture capital that was getting invested versus what the demand was from startups at the time. And figured you have to take the leap at some point, and jumped into it thinking, okay, as long as there's something that can sustain, even a smaller fund, that would open up more opportunities in the future. But we got lucky. Even our first fund was a meaningful size, and I think
it was 25 million.
25 million, which again for Pakistan at the time,
it's too big.
It's a lot of money. Now, of course, the ecosystem has seen close to $1 billion come in since 2018 to now. However, that's still a drop in the ocean, and maybe we'll talk about that later as well. But the trigger was really some motivation myself, of course, family being here, and friends, and ultimately this being my own backyard. So I felt if I had a competitive advantage, it had to be here, right? Like rather than staying in London or like, these high finance hubs around the world.
Of course, because you're going to be, we're just talking off camera, in these countries, you will always be a second class citizen, probably. And even if not, there is so much competition in these markets, London, for example, or Paris or New York, that it's very hard to stand out. But in countries like Morocco or Pakistan, it's easy and you can really bring the value faster.
I often say you do something 10% better in Morocco and Pakistan, and it's already going to be noticed. But the reality is, like, the kind of experiences that we have the opportunity to do something like 50% better or more than that, right? Like,
exactly.
And I think it's really about a mental block that sometimes we have, because we get comfortable in our cushy roles, like, wherever we are elsewhere in the world. And oftentimes you ignored, like, the opportunities that exist by virtue of there being challenges. If there weren't any challenges, it would also be very boring to build, and it would be a lot more competitive. So maybe one of the reasons why there's a vacuum is a lot of people don't delve into it because they think that the challenges cannot be overcome. However, if you are from there, you have like the requisite skills and just need to put in some hard work and get done.
I'm so curious, actually, because you've been to Morgan Stanley, you've done MIT, Oxford, so many great and big names. So I want to take a small masterclass of how we can build a fund. Honestly, I know that you go and grab the money from some LPs, which is like limited partners, like people who has a lot of money and just like put some of it. But how you convince them for Pakistan and
I think there's a couple of considerations. One is just like the trust element, which and trust cutting across two ways.
As a partner,
as a
partner, because you have the experience and
exactly. So one element is that
the track record.
People trust you with investing their money. That element, of course, requires like the entire career that I had before that.
At least 10-15 years experience.
Exactly, which leads up to a point where people trust you with their money and to make sound investment choices and decisions. The second element, particularly in the case of Pakistan, is how will it be structured and is it safe? Because Pakistan suffers from this perception reality gap that people think that anyone who's Pakistani is going to take their money and run away on day one. So there's certain structuring elements that have to be incorporated. For example, unfortunately, still to this day, the Pakistani regime is not yet sophisticated enough for the funds to be domiciled here. Of course, they can be, but they can only be done in Pakistani currency, which of course increases an additional layer of risk in there. So both of those elements had to be solved for. I had, of course, worked at Morgan Stanley, like you pointed out, and then I did private equity, which is effectively an investment a professional role. So I just had to move some of that knowledge to an earlier stage. So that had built up credibility. And then, of course, whenever your ex-bosses and your colleagues are investing in you, that's a strong sign to go and approach other limited partners as well. None of that is possible unless you are willing to put your own money on the line as well and have skin in the game. So we started that way. And
so how much you need to put 1 million to get the other 24?
Well, that's a $1 million question. No, I think there's enough. Generally for a fund, a couple of % of the total commitments should be enough. But of course, if you do more, that's a sign of more confidence that other LPs will build on you. The key there is to also target the right mix of institutions, high net worth individuals, and call them more common kind of
So what is the right mix? Tell us.
So our largest investors are the IFC. We were in fact lucky to be the first venture
IFC institution,
International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank Group.
Okay.
And that gave a stamp of validation, which goes a long way.
Investors. Oh.
And off the back of that, we got a bunch of Pakistani big conglomerate groups, call them family offices. But our biggest single component would be Pakistanis in the diaspora, investors, consultants, professionals who are based outside of Pakistan but wanted to do something for the country.
Pakistan,
and short of them packing up their bags and coming here and setting up their own funds, they supported at the beginning, which went a long way again in connecting the dots as well. Because that way you're not just getting capital, you're also getting their experience, like, through their input.
Of course.
You're also getting a little bit of a network effect, which then whenever they're around other Pakistanis or other professionals, they then convey the message that we all want to convey, which is that exciting things are happening in the country, and it's worth looking at this ecosystem, which has previously not been on the radar, but might offer outsized return opportunities as well.
And if you think that Pakistan can be a global startup hub, drop a globe below in the comments.
Very interesting. Okay. So you convinced them, even like we had like a really bad episode in Pakistan of like overvaluation that happened for Airlift and stuff. Yeah. How did you came around this season?
So good question again, but we call it luck or good timing. We actually started before Airlift was even around. So some of the entry valuations that we got will be impossible to get now.
Right.
And some of those are the best performing companies that we have in our portfolio.
Like, let's give the audience some examples.
There's this company called Simpesa, which is a payment aggregator.
Okay.
You wouldn't have heard about it because it's a B2B2C play. At that time, we also invested in a household name now called Bykea. So
this is I know.
we were part of the first round into what is now a bank called Abhi. They do earned wage access as well. And a lot of at that time, we were also able to get board positions in these companies because of like the size of checks we were writing. And what that allowed us to do was to see maybe some of this heating up of the ecosystem and the valuation increase a little bit before it started happening. So if you look at our deployment history in the country, we actually deployed the least in these years 2020, 21, 22, because that's when the entry point was very high. And the thing about generating returns is if you get your entry wrong, it's very unlikely that you're going to make good returns because the rest of the risks are still the same. Even if you pay up at the beginning, you still have the founder risk, you have the technology risk, you have the execution risk, financing risk, all of those risks still remain. But you're just cutting down on the returns. And that trade-off is very critical for Pakistan. And that's why we've seen this kind of capital dry up from the ecosystem, because there are better trade-offs or better alternatives available for the same level of risk, but better returns are available elsewhere. And again, that's a longer debate that we probably don't want to get into. But navigating that is the very job of a fund manager. Right, like that's the trust I was speaking about
risk
earlier.
Management.
Exactly, risk management, and to be able to figure out when to deploy more, when to pull out. And I should say nothing is perfect, right? We've also had mistakes. We've also invested in some companies at the height of that bubble, which have not panned out. But that doesn't. The model allows you a little bit of that. I don't want to call it flexibility, but it caters for some of those mistakes because it operates on a portfolio basis. So as long as we manage to hit those a couple of home runs from the time maybe before valuations were inflated, I think we should still be doing okay. We have managed to return some capital to our LPs as well, which I believe we were the first ones, and I believe to this day still the only ones that have actually had consistent quarters of DPI being generated for our investors.
Amazing.
But it's still very early for the entire ecosystem, even though our fund now is in its 7th year. So from a fund life perspective, it might be.
So we're talking about 10 years?
Yes,
I guess.
It's 10 years. It can be extended, but I think our intention is to
generally in emerging markets more 10, 12. And US, it's like 5, 7.
Exactly. And I think Pakistan, the direction of travel is still right. The penetration has still a lot of room to grow. The mismatch between VC per capita in Pakistan versus countries like India, Indonesia is still tremendous. But the challenge is how many of these startups can survive this period when funding has dried up. And that then goes back to the question around unit economics and really sustainable
business
earnings
from day one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's good that the ecosystem is now focusing on that. But
it's everywhere in the world. I mean, it's drying up everywhere in the world. And Pakistan and emerging markets is
absolutely. The other thing that period has done, just to complete that thought.
Gee.
The other thing that has happened is the resilient founders have also emerged through this period, right? Now you know who is there to stay, who has navigated this environment better than others, and I think capital is going to continue to flow to them, because it's not that people are not looking for opportunities to invest in. It's just that the spray and pray era is a little bit done, because sometimes at the beginning of an ecosystem, people think that, okay, just spray it around, we'll catch something, and ultimately, like,
we're going to succeed one day.
We'll succeed one day, right? I think we don't have the liberty or the luxury of doing that in Pakistan.
No. So you've been investing in early stage, I guess, like in all emerging markets, especially Pakistan, it's really well needed, and especially early stage, sometimes we don't need much. I was with Sara Malvy from Eye to Eye in Karachi, and she was telling me, like, maybe sometimes a $3,000 check or $5,000 check can really bring a project to life. So how you position yourself in this early stage?
Well,
savior. Maybe.
I want to find some of these $3,000 or $5,000 ones, but I think the point that she's trying to make is a valid one, which is that your dollar can stretch very far in Pakistan if you are spending it the right way. And sometimes it's really just about encouraging someone to get started. These days we argue that, hey, you can start without even going to an investor, because really, if you have, like, some savings of your own, or if you start with friends and family, the key is to get started. And now there are enough tools, enough resources around in the ecosystem, and also a lot of learning on what to avoid. For example, if someone has spent $1 learning a lesson that hasn't worked, you shouldn't be spending another $1 learning the same lesson. And maybe that speaks to the larger, like, kind of like communication and interaction and collaboration that we need in the ecosystem. But we have the benefit of that. Like I mentioned earlier, if $1 billion have gone in, and we don't have a value to show for it, then we should at least have the lessons to show for it.
Of course.
And sometimes we're a little bit cagey in sharing those lessons. But I think when you have ecosystem enablers such as Sara, they become conduits for some of that learning as well. The same way we are now smarter than we were, like, 7 years ago when we started, about which set of spaces to invest in, how to guide entrepreneurs around different stage and phase of their company, and where to spend money and where not. We still will make mistakes, but at least, like, the second, third time, we should be better at, like,
better and better. It's exactly why I launched this Wasssl Media, because I felt like it's kind of a tech crunch for the MENAP region. And I felt like our ecosystem from Morocco to Pakistan are insight-based ecosystem. They are not database, not yet. Because US and Europe have built their database like the last 40, 50, 70 years maybe. But we are not there yet. And as you said, like an entrepreneur from Egypt or from Pakistan will repeat the exact same mistake as other entrepreneur, because he didn't learn the lesson, he was not exposed to this, and he will just like maybe burn unnecessary capital or energy or time. So it's exactly like to share those insights from the ecosystem and helping and empowering entrepreneurs to navigate it in a more clear, let's say, vision, and having a 360 degrees of like some industries, some also markets, because Pakistan and Egypt, I found like there is a lot of similarities, but still like very few Pakistani company will expand to Egypt, and oppositely. I mean, it was done by Swivel, but very badly. That's not the right example. But they was in that burning area.
But I guess like if you take like Maha's example, there was learning from there, and now it's being done in a way that like is much better suited to the Pakistan market as well. So it goes back to the same point around learning as well.
So how you think, talking about global expansion, how you think startups from Pakistan can compete internationally?
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow, and it will mean the world to us.
I think Pakistan has a talent base that is unique, at least in the region. I think we can still function as a cheap testing ground, where again you can have like both back offices over here, but also like to test, to really to stress test unit economics. This is really the market. A friend of mine, Habib, says one should learn in Pakistan and earn elsewhere. Somewhere else, right? And I think the natural expansion avenue is really the Middle East, where we're seeing our
already
own,
stories.
exactly.
Yeah.
Where we are
Postex.
correct.
Hubble.
Collabs is there. Our next fund is actually also out of Saudi. Hopefully, we will be announcing soon, which also has a Pakistan angle. But we're very clear about that thesis. Companies that have demonstrated that they can execute in Pakistan are actually very well equipped to execute over there as well. We also have a precedent from a long time ago of helping set up companies and institutions in that region as well. Maybe perhaps one of the better examples is Kareem, where technology was developed out of Karachi, and one of the founders was Pakistani as well. But they were able to capture much higher value markets in the Middle East, while in some cases the volume was still out of Pakistan as well. So I think there are going to be variants of that. It becomes easier when it's more of a technology product rather than an operations intensive opportunity or startup. But we're starting to see this happen. You gave example of Abi from our portfolio. Simpesa, which I mentioned earlier, has also moved its headquarters now to UAE as well. Because there also comes a stage where you need more global talent as well, right? Like while we might have good engineering talent,
to create this perspective and openness,
and also diversification allows you to attract a new pool or a broader pool of investors. It is just generally also a good strategy in terms of your exposure and risk management, etc. So, but it all needs to happen at the right time.
Right.
I think one of the challenges that Airlift faced, for example, was whenever they would open a new market, even within the country, a new city, it's effectively like doing a new startup all over again. And the network effects don't carry over to even a neighboring city, let alone a new country.
Right.
So where those effects are a little bit diluted, where the economics and the execution playbook is completely different, that becomes more challenging. I think we as an ecosystem maybe are not ready for such expansion, but in areas such as fintech, I think it makes a lot of sense for some of these companies to start exploring what are other markets that they can target. Maybe also to improve their overall economic proposition, which hopefully will also allow them to, like I said, raise capital, reach the next stage, and maybe also open up liquidity and exit options for them. That's a very important point for the Pakistani ecosystem. We need some of that liquidity to be generated. We need some exits to be generated because it's going to reinstill that confidence in the ecosystem. And unfortunately, the public markets in Pakistan don't have that depth and liquidity. And also for a company to acquire a single country exposure and single currency exposure company, an international company.
It's not worth it.
It's not worth it, right? The risks are too much, and the challenges around, again, state bank and capital repatriation, etc. Even if these are not in practice issues, they are at least built into the perception that external investors or investors from outside Pakistan have about the country. So we need to address those, and the only way to address those is to share success stories. We've had some successes in the past, but I think we need a lot more of that.
Capitalize on more and more. And I've seen the acquisition for me, it's still it's a little bit slow in the region, definitely, because it's a nascent ecosystem, let's say. It's still like a baby, just having
I don't know how long it's going to continue to be a baby. Right?
Yeah, it's very hard to grow. It's it reflects us in somehow. We stay baby very long in our parents' house, so it reflects a little bit the culture.
If you ask people in my life, I'm 40 years old, but
still like a baby with your parents. So it reflects somehow the culture of the people and of the countries that we are living in. But I feel like the acquisition has to happen. At least most of them has to happen within the region. I don't think maybe an Egyptian startup or a Pakistani startup will expect to be acquired. Some of them, yes, from US or from Europe or wherever, but I feel like regional acquisition and build up on and consolidating the ecosystem between us will be much more stronger and will bring value on the long term. What do you think of it?
I completely agree. One aspect is that they are more familiar with this country or the region than anyone flying in from the UK or the US.
Right.
The second thing is that they deal with Pakistanis on a daily basis as well. And they know the capability that we have, right? So there is some element of trust that has built up over many years, which again is what we're looking at over here. When we talk about an acquisition of a startup, really you're acquiring talent, right? Like you're still backing them to continue to build something very meaningful because we have not reached the scale of some of these companies that someone would just a behemoth would just come in and acquire and get rid of the team in there and expect it to continue to run the same way. So I think it goes back to trust and their willingness to back and provide risk capital and risks losing their money. It would be higher for someone from Pakistan, also because of maybe some religious reasons, etc. For one reason or the other, there has been some trust built up over the years, which goes a long way in the venture-backed ecosystem, really.
And I would love to know what you tell your startup or how you advise your startup who want to expand. What you tell them about the right time, and what are the warning maybe you will give around maybe regulation in some other countries, market fit, product market fit, talent? What will be the red flags and the warning you will give them?
The first warning is to not consider expansion until you've actually proven in your home market that you can capture it and capture it in an economically viable way.
Totally agreed.
The second thing that we've talked about is how would that core business get impacted if they start focusing on a new market in terms of founder focus.
The local business, you mean?
Yeah, the local business, right? Because
doesn't have to be impacted.
Yeah.
Or as least as possible.
As least as possible, right? Because ultimately, expanding means that you're diluted in terms of your attention and your focus and the time you can give any business. Then we will ask, are there people who can help them with it? For example, whether the business that is already running in Pakistan, can that be run by someone else while the founder himself, him or herself, is going around raising the new capital, trying to figure out how to do market entry in a completely new jurisdiction. And then over there, where we see some of those gaps, we will help them do it. For example, if one of our companies has expanded to a new jurisdiction, we have some of that knowledge then by virtue of having that experience. So we can share that. So unless we're able to check all the boxes that the right people are there, both in the home market, but also in wherever they're looking to expand, and that the ROI around the new investment is also making sense, that really are the initial starting considerations around. But whatever you plan, things can always go wrong, and sometimes you can test the market as well. So we would always encourage
less money, less
and where
resources.
we think that it is difficult for a company to do all of this on their own, we would even encourage them to consider partnering up. Because, for example, in a country like Saudi Arabia, we ourselves
almost a must.
We ourselves, as fund managers, are partnering up with other GPs in the country to launch a co-GP fund.
Of course.
Because we think that makes a big difference in terms of the support that they will be able to provide on the ground, the network, all of it. And also LP trust, because they've been in that market for a longer time. And while we might get credit for executing in Pakistan, we have not previously executed in Saudi Arabia. And to be able to bridge that gap, we think that approach made sense for us. And we think it will make sense for a lot of startups that are looking for expansion as well.
Of course. Interesting. You mentioned something I want to ask about, but I forgot. No problem. It will be back. What are the kind of businesses and sectors you think it will win globally from Pakistan?
I think currently, so far, Fintech
was the king.
Yeah. And I think the question is really about what can we make sitting out of Pakistan? So a Pakistan for the world kind of offering.
Exactly.
I think we have, if we look broadly across within technology, some talent here that has been building games for a while. and I want to broaden that
I
out
was so
to.
surprised of this.
I want to broaden that out to more Web3 and gaming as well, right? Like, that entire domain. The other thing that I do want to mention, even though like we are probably from a structural perspective not set up to be a leading nation in AI, but the one advantage is that no one has that like 20-year experience in doing that, right? Like, so there should be no reason why we fall behind. However, the kind of support, the tools, the resources available are not the same as they are in Silicon Valley or like, Tel Aviv or like in other ecosystems around the world. But I think, fintech, I continue to believe in. There are a lot of gaps within Pakistan that continue to exist. And I think those will get addressed over time. But that doesn't answer your question around
like what? Give me one example. If like there is one founder listening to you today, what he should maybe build.
I think there's still
in the upcoming 2-3 years.
I think there's still gaps in logistics. There are gaps in healthcare. Certainly gaps in education, although a very tough sector to crack.
Very tough. I've built my first edtech and like it fails miserably.
Yeah, I think very tough to build, but that doesn't mean that the gaps still don't exist. I think what we're seeing is a lot of startups that started as maybe like supply chain startups, etc., have all morphed into some kind of a fintech offering as well, because ultimately payments and money touches every startup, right?
Yeah, I was talking to Hassan Shersha from Kalpe last time. Like every company now is a fintech. Even Facebook is a fintech because they are like a bank working and doing the promotion and the ads and stuff. So it's like everyone is a fintech.
Yeah,
somehow.
I was joking with a friend the other day that like when you're a big industrialist in Pakistan, you have this dream of owning a bank in Pakistan. Right? And we've gone full circle where even startups who were like all about like disrupting conventional businesses, etc., they also want to eventually become a bank in Pakistan, right? Like so I mean, and for good reason, right? Like they make good money, and like again, that is like the holy grail, at least in terms of like any fintechs or financial institutions. One can still stay nimble and move quickly and have disruptive offerings or products, but fintech overall is a big space, and I think there's a lot more to be done over there as well. We are only starting to see like lending opportunities. You spoke earlier about lack of data in markets like Morocco and Pakistan. We're only starting or scratching the surface around being able to quantify the risk around individuals. Right, like and businesses, and to be able to lend against that, and that will take some iterations, and we can then also have adjacent offerings. For example, InsurTech has very little penetration in Pakistan, but very big opportunity. So I think broadly, financial opportunities, financial institutions or fintech, and then adjacencies around it will still probably be the space that I would target.
Amazing.
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow, and it will mean the world to us.
Audiences, founders, listen well, so you can build relevant stuff that can make you also money.
There you go.
And this can be relevant for the country and even abroad. I want you to walk me through a little bit the second fund. What's happening is like I heard it's like a climate focused fund.
No, so
or there is something climate around there,
yeah,
right?
so actually there was like just a clarification. There was in the middle a fund that we were looking to do around climate. Unfortunately, that did not pan out. We did go through an entire process. Well, not yet. Maybe we'll come back to that. And I think there was a little bit of misalignment with like the partners that we were looking to do that with. Even though we did go through like quite an extensive process with the Green Climate Fund, we actually also got like a commitment. The first such fund for Pakistan as it was envisaged, and maybe those partners are going to continue to go ahead with it. But what we decided was that at a time when the thematic focus on climate was waning a little bit off the back of the new US administration and US aid and similar programs being pulled back, there wasn't going to be enough institutional support around it and capital backing it.
And it's very capital intensive.
It is very capital intensive, and that also has a knock-on effect. even entrepreneurs, your marginal entrepreneurs that is looking at a space to target for a new company, they might not pick climate, even though the need in Pakistan is dire.
Energy is a big problem. Water is a big problem. Natural
Absolutely.
disasters. I mean, it's
one of the most vulnerable countries to climate. So I don't want to downplay the importance of climate-oriented solutions for Pakistan, but as we were speaking earlier, the mix or the set of assumptions that come together to bring together a fund dedicated to a space requires many other things as well. And some of those were not in place. And so we felt that making sustainability and climate as one of the themes that we do as part of the new fund makes sense, rather than doing an entire fund around that, because we wouldn't have been able to achieve the portfolio diversification. And again, even though impact and saving lives and mitigating emissions is a very important component, but financial viability is also very crucial.
Of course.
And I think we needed to, at that time, prioritize like a different mix of those two goals, like impact plus financial returns. But in the future, we hope to certainly come back to the space. We like the space overall, and we think there's a lot to be done. We're sitting in Lahore. We're lucky this time that some of the measures being taken by the government and also general awareness of the people has led to lesser smog this wintertime. Otherwise, around this time, you struggle to even drive around.
It's a little bit less, much less. Last year, I was not even able to walk sometimes and or to drive. It was impossible.
Those smog guns, I don't know.
It works.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that they work, but at least we're not seeing as much smog as we've seen in the past. So maybe we'll give some credit to the government for doing it.
Right. And how big is the second fund then? You were telling me that you are partnering with some Saudi GPs. So is Pakistan and Saudi coming together, investing between Pakistan and Saudi, or all the Middle East, Pakistan region? What's the thesis?
Yeah, so the thesis is going to be maybe a bigger component for Saudi, but it's then the broader GCC, or actually I can say the MENAP region.
Me in MENAP. I'm like, we have to work together then.
Yeah. I do have to be careful because we are going through the approval process with the regulator in Saudi, so I don't want to disclose anything that gives away any of the details. But that is squarely our focus, and I think it comes off the back. It actually comes off the back of 3-4 of our companies having expanded to Saudi Arabia from our first fund portfolio as well. So we believe that there's a good kind of test of
a logical
exactly
thing.
and the thesis has been tested as well.
Right.
And with those partners out of Saudi, we have a lot of conviction in them and their network, and we believe that the backing for that fund will also majority come from Saudi Arabia, which is an important point as well. It's about building an economic corridor between Saudi Arabia and Pakistan off the back of the defense agreement and everything that we have. I think there's a lot of positive momentum there, so we want to capitalize at the right time on that.
I really believe in the synergy in this region. It's it can be unstoppable if we do it right, because we are much more similar than us with Europeans or compared to US or American people. I mean, we are so much different. We try to adapt. It's I'm saying it always in my media. It's just the game that the kids has trying to put the circle in a triangle, and they're just it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It's exactly this that we've been experiencing at least the last years, and now there is this awareness that we have maybe to work together to support each other and maybe move forward. No one gonna save us from outside.
Absolutely. I think this point is so important. We need to wake up. We need to realize that the economic reality is not such that we can afford to not consider where the next financing round is going to be raised, or what markets to target, etc. And if we are going to continue to go after what is a squeezed wallet in Pakistan already, there's not that much juice you can get out of it. And it's okay to still have that passion for building in Pakistan, but we need to just tweak our ways a little bit, right? We maybe leverage that same workforce, that same talent to also channel opportunities that might apply in other markets. We need to be smart about it, but because otherwise, just trying to survive in a market rather than thrive, that is not necessarily a very sensible strategy. Again, people might come at me for saying this because, again, I am devoted to the Pakistan opportunity and like the ecosystem.
Right.
But at the same time, we all need to also see where the wind is blowing and try to set our sail the
On
right
the
way.
right direction.
The right direction.
How do you see the next 5-10 years, the role that Pakistani ecosystem can play on the global level?
I think we're going to continue to move along. There will be some consolidation first. By consolidation, I mean like a lot of startups are just not going to be able to survive. And some of the bigger ones are going to gobble up some of the smaller pieces to maybe offer, again, maybe a fintech offering if they weren't doing that before. Because the penetration we're still very low on the penetration curve. If we talk about overall e-commerce versus the retail market, we're still low single digits, and I think so. There's a lot of room to continue.
And I think with AI pairing, I've seen which startup that is in YC now. What's the name? There's like understanding the Pashto, the Urdu, the different languages. I don't know if you heard of it.
Yes, I've
Uplift? No, not Uplift.
No,
Uplift
no.
AI? I think it's Uplift.
Oh,
Uplift AI.
Yeah, okay.
Uplift AI. They were part of the YC
this latest
cohort.
batch. I'm trying to
And there's,
remember
like,
the guy's name. I should know this
connecting
actually.
Connecting this with like, as you said, like this 80% maybe of the population that are like disconnected or not included digitally can be included with these tools and like really just, I feel like the numbers can jump from one day to another to like 1,000% maybe.
They can. They can. Again, nothing from a structural perspective is preventing this fresh wave of startups that are coming on from getting that traction, particularly with AI, as you're pointing out. I think it's really about like where you're going to focus your effort and energy. I think the most talented founders right now are also facing this dilemma of whether to continue to build in Pakistan or to go for more lucrative opportunities and build in another ecosystem, in another market where at least their perception is it might be easier, right? So someone who's at YC, again, credit to them that they're focusing on also like, building something that is applicable in Pakistan. But the reality is that they will have a lot more opportunity, a lot more backing, a lot more like potential for collaboration in the ecosystem that they're in currently. Just by virtue of that being a much bigger space, a much bigger, much more, a much longer track record of building in that ecosystem. But some of those learnings are going to trickle down to Pakistan as well. And I think the ones that are here, I can only encourage them to continue building because sooner or later it's going to
pay off.
It's going to pay off. And also in that process, you're going to train so many other people, so many new entrepreneurs, and sooner
and talents for other startups.
Exactly, and the hope is that one day we have like enough critical mass of people who've built something or learned something that just
part of
exactly, and that then will feed off the next wave, and like hopefully then we can in a decade from now we can look back at some of those success stories from the ones that were resilient, that continued to like focus on this market and also took advantage of the vacuum that gets created when a startup leaves or when a big corporation leaves. These days we're also having to read about or hear about big MNCs leaving the market, etc. While that's not an encouraging sign from a macro perspective, it does open up opportunities for some of the smaller firms to step in and to capture market share.
Of course.
And so it's about like what are you going to do about it?
Opportunities on the right time.
Rather than complaining, what are you going to do about it?
No complaining. We are here for that. You've been a judge on Shark Tank, right?
Yes.
How was the experience for you on personal level and on investment level? Actually, I was so surprised by how Shark Tank was managed in Pakistan. It was like a world class level. I feel like it was US thing, which is great.
I think maybe.
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow and it will mean the world to us.
I'll address that first. I think production quality and everything was excellent. And in fact, we were very pleasantly surprised at the quality of the final product. And I think what was also very good was the thesis behind it, which is like really to I don't want to use democratize because it's a bit overused, but really like instilling the notion that entrepreneurship can be a viable choice in the country.
Of course.
And when that show is being watched in like, small towns and cities and streets
you show
everywhere,
them what is possible.
What is possible, right? Like maybe something, an entrepreneur is coming up and presenting a product or an offering that someone thought of on their dining table, but didn't do anything about, right? Like, so the next time they think about something similar, they'll get up and believe that they can get backing or just maybe get up and start doing something about it. So that overall experience was very good. I think it was educative. I think it was inspiring, like, for people to see. The quality of deals, I would say, was mediocre, and I think that's not a slight on the Pakistan ecosystem. It's just the nature of such a show. When it begins, people are unsure how it's going to go. Some entrepreneurs are unsure whether they can go on. Because it's also a high pressure environment, with all these cameras around you and everything.
Yeah.
And that quality, I think, is only going to improve moving forward. I personally enjoyed it a lot because it was something new. I think it obviously elevates one's profile a little bit in the country. And I think it was continuity of the same mission in a way that brought me back to Pakistan, which is to find capable people that are building interesting companies and be part of that journey. And hopefully they do well economically, financially as well, while also having some positive impact. So I think the impact side clearly was there. Hopefully some of those deals are going to translate into good financial returns as well.
Amazing. What keeps you up at night?
Very good question. I think I don't want to go
transparently.
Yeah, I think I don't want to go into too much, but one has ups and downs in personal life as well. So for the last few months, it's been really more personal life. But I think from a work perspective or from a career perspective, I think this is also an interesting time, right? Because like I mentioned, our new fund is also Saudi focused. And so I want to try to get that balance right. I don't want to do anything that reduces my focus on my own country, my own people, and playing to the strengths that I have. But at the same time, I don't want to regret in 20 years' time that in our neighborhood, in the region, there was all this value creation that happened, and I couldn't play a role or participate in any of that as well. So I think now it's about figuring out where those corridors can be built. How does one take the Pakistan story outside and build linkages, build those bridges?
So it's really something that you live by every day.
Every
you eat
single
it,
day.
you breathe it, you sleep it.
One has to, right?
Without obsession in these markets, you cannot survive, I think.
Yeah,
that's what I feel.
Yeah, and also, I think that there's the news cycle in Pakistan can be quite negative and downbeat, and so you want to stay above that as well, and so sometimes it also just helps from keeping my sanity, and that get the opportunity to travel and see what else is happening elsewhere, and then to be able to bring it back and connect it to Pakistan somehow, then basically means that you're not looking at two separate worlds.
Right,
and I think that's really the new mission.
Creating this homogenous life kind of situation.
Exactly.
Because there is no work-life balance.
Yeah, exactly. And I also have to be honest. I have so much drama in my life, that maybe a little bit less would be good.
If we give you $1,000, how would you invest it?
Oh, just $1,000?
Just 1,000.
I mean, just $1,000, you just go take an ETF somewhere or an exchange fund if one has the opportunity to do outside Pakistan.
In Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, well,
or stock market or Dubai?
Yeah,
Even I've heard that the Pakistani stock market is quite
Yeah,
well
I think it's
performing.
going well. I think I would in Pakistan I would just do a mix of like some of the key sectors. Of course, technology should be one of them, and like and shout out to systems who've done incredibly well over the last few
Right.
years. But I think more than that $1,000, I would get into the habit of putting in a little bit every month. Right, like and I think that just getting into the habit of saving and investing that
Compound effect
yeah.
will be
And
the long
certainly
run.
nothing in real estate, please. Like we need to reallocate capital away from the real estate sector into more
This is a big problem in Pakistan.
into more productive industries. The problem with real
It's
estate
like
is like
money sleep in there
yeah, and
and
also
speculation.
because you're not building anything, right? Like you buy something and you're waiting for the market to like lift the price. And so if you can't do anything about like the value creation element of like an investment, then I think you are not doing justice to it, right? So if you want to be just a passive investor, just put it into like a small amount every month into some stocks, and again, everyone has their own preference for like what kind of stocks to pick, but don't park it in an account. Have it working for you, but also more importantly, be in the habit of picking things where you have to make a call and where the opportunity to generate alpha is more than like whatever the market is going to offer you generally.
Where do you think will be the biggest tech hub? Riyadh, Abu Dhabi, Karachi, Lahore, Dubai. Even Dubai for me is already.
Yeah, good question. I think Dubai, of course, has a bit of a lead compared to the rest. But I think the way Riyadh is moving, I think eventually it'll become the biggest. But I think Abu Dhabi might have something to say about it because I think they're approaching it the right way.
Yeah, the future AI city and stuff.
Exactly. And it's interesting to
And yes, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel. It will help us a lot to grow and it will mean the world to us.
see how like UAE has done this because even in non-tech or like venture ecosystem terms, Dubai was a bit of the flashier one, right? Like so called like the brother that's like out there going out and partying, while like the one that's like managing the business and taking care of like bringing in the money. The big brother was Abu Dhabi, and I think that will eventually show. Right, like Dubai still feels a little bit transient, whereas people who are building in Abu Dhabi, I think, are building for a longer term. And I think a similar mindset is being applied out of Riyadh, but Riyadh has like many years to go before like they can really catch up, both from an infrastructure perspective, at the speed at which regulation is being put in place, being that hub for talent to come into. So yeah, it will be between those. And I'm sorry, my Pakistani friends, I don't think we can be at that level. But I think within the Pakistani cities, Karachi will be the one that is the main hub.
Amazing. How will you describe Sarmayacar in like 3 emojis? I'll give you.
Oh, wow. Okay. I like how someone has picked. So I have to pick a rocket.
Yeah, a lot of founders who sit at your place had the rocket thing.
Yeah, but I wanna. Should I put like a hug, like because like we're kind of like trying to support. I don't know if I can search in this language.
There is this emoji with like the 2 hands. I think this is a kind of a hug thing.
Well, something to. Okay, I'm going.
Supporting hand.
Okay, I found one. And okay, I don't know. Well, that's I put like the traditional hug one.
Okay. This is more strength.
Yeah.
And what is the hug? Okay, it's like a hug. Okay. I didn't know that it exists. I thought it was a camera.
It does look like a camera to be fair. Yeah.
Okay, I learned something with you today. Maybe a last thing that maybe we haven't had the chance to talk about today that you want to share?
No, I would just want to actually like thank you for doing what you're doing, because I think part of the challenge that we've had is getting our voices out there and to have more participants in it in other parts of the world also share the Pakistani story and giving us that voice is very important. And I think that plays a big role in changing the narrative. And I think
It's exactly the mission.
building brand Pakistan in
I
this
just need
new
funding.
economy, in the new economy, is very important. And I think you're doing our job for us. So thank you so much for doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just like a little bit hard. I'm suffering exactly as all Pakistani founders, I feel, is to get it funded. It's the main thing. And if you want to do things better and improve and keep it on, because it's like a self-funded operation, I'll say. But I want to make it really grow and thrive in the whole region. And I imagine Wasssl like having small teams in different ecosystem in like Pakistan, in Saudi, in Morocco, in Egypt, because I feel like we cannot have a drone vision of our ecosystem. It's like, okay, Egypt is like this, Pakistan is like this. It's not possible. You need to be in the ground, creating these connections and understanding from the ecosystem and people building in the ecosystem themselves. Otherwise, it's not possible to have the right insights and the right information and the right knowledge to navigate in the region. So that's the big objective. We hope that we're going to make it happen within the next 10, 15 years, inshallah.
Inshallah.
It's a long-term vision.
Inshallah. I have no doubt it'll happen. And thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you, Rabeel. We're done.